Intestinal obstruction. Classification. Intestinal obstruction may be classified into two types. Filled circle dynamic, in which peristalsis is working against a mechanical obstruction. It may occur in an acute or a chronic form, figure 78.1. Filled circle adynamic, in which there is no mechanical obstruction, peristalsis is absent or inadequate, e.g. paralytic ileus or pseudo-obstruction. Causes of intestinal obstruction. Dynamic filled circle, intraluminal filled circle, fecal impaction filled circle, foreign bodies filled circle, Bezos filled circle, gallstones. Intramural filled circle, stricture filled circle, malignancy filled circle, intussusception filled circle, volvulus filled circle, extramural filled circle, bands, adhesions filled circle, hernia. Adynamic filled circle, paralytic ileus filled circle, pseudo-obstruction. Pathophysiology irrespective of etiology or acuteness of onset. In dynamic mechanical obstruction, the bowel proximal to the obstruction dilates and the bowel below the obstruction exhibits normal peristalsis and absorption until it becomes empty and collapses. Initially, proximal peristalsis is increased in an attempt to overcome the obstruction. If the obstruction is not relieved, the bowel continues to dilate. Ultimately, there is a reduction in peristaltic strength, resulting in flacidity and paralysis. The distension proximal to an obstruction is caused by two factors. Filled circle gas. There is a significant overgrowth of both aerobic and anaerobic organisms, resulting in considerable gas production. Following the reabsorption of oxygen and carbon dioxide, the majority is made up of nitrogen, 90%, and hydrogen sulfide. Pathophysiology irrespective of etiology or acuteness of onset. In dynamic fluid. This is made up of the various digestive juices, saliva, 500 ml, bile, 500 ml, pancreatic secretions, 500 ml, gastric secretions, 1 liter, all per 24 hours. This accumulates in the gut lumen as absorption by the obstructed gut is retarded. Dehydration and electrolyte loss are therefore due to filled circle reduced oral intake, filled circle defective intestinal absorption, filled circle losses as a result of vomiting, filled circle sequestration in the bowel lumen, filled circle transudation of fluid into the peritoneal cavity. Strangulation. It is important to appreciate that the consequences of intestinal obstruction are not immediately life-threatening unless there is superimposed strangulation. When strangulation occurs, the blood supply is compromised and the bowel becomes ischemic. Causes of strangulation. Direct pressure on the bowel wall, filled circle hernial orifices, filled circle adhesions, bands. Interrupted mesenteric blood flow, filled circle volvulus, filled circle intussusception. Increased intraluminal pressure, filled circle closed loop obstruction. Ischemia from direct pressure on the bowel wall from a constricting band such as a hernial orifice is easy to understand. Distension of the obstructed segment of bowel results in high pressure within the bowel wall. This can happen when only part of the bowel wall is obstructed, as seen in a Richter's hernia, see chapter 64. Venous return is compromised before the arterial supply. The resultant increase in capillary pressure leads to impaired local perfusion and, once the arterial supply is impaired, hemorrhagic infarction occurs. As the viability of the bowel is compromised, translocation and systemic exposure to anaerobic organisms and endotoxin occurs. The morbidity and mortality associated with strangulation are largely dependent on the duration of the ischemia and its extent. Elderly patients and those with comorbidities are more vulnerable to its effects. Although in strangulated external hernias the segment involved is often short, any length of ischemic bowel can cause significant systemic effects secondary to sepsis. Bowel distension and fluid sequestration proximal to the obstruction can result in significant dehydration. When bowel involvement is extensive, circulatory failure is common. Closed-loop obstruction. This occurs when the bowel is obstructed at both the proximal and distal points, figure 78.2. The distension is principally confined to the closed loop. Distension proximal to the obstructed segment is not typically marked. A classic form of closed-loop obstruction is seen in the presence of a malignant stricture of the colon with a competent ileocecal valve, present in up to one-third of individuals. This can occur with lesions as far distally as the rectum. The inability of the distended colon to decompress itself into the small bowel results in an increase in luminal pressure, which is greatest at the cecum, with subsequent impairment of blood flow in the wall. Unrelieved, this results in necrosis and perforation, figure 78.3. Special types of mechanical intestinal obstruction. Internal hernia. Internal herniation occurs when a portion of the small intestine becomes entrapped in one of the retroperitoneal fossae or in a congenital mesenteric defect. The following are potential sites of internal herniation. All are very rare. Filled circle, the foramen of Winslow. Filled circle, a defect in the mesentery. Filled circle, a defect in the transverse mesocolon. Filled circle, defects in the broad ligament. Filled circle, congenital or acquired diaphragmatic hernia. Filled circle, duodenal retroperitoneal fossae. Filled circle, cecal, appendiceal retroperitoneal fossae. Filled circle, intersigmoid fossa. Internal herniation in the absence of adhesions is rare and a preoperative diagnosis is unusual. The standard treatment of an obstructed hernia is to release the constricting agent by division. This should not be undertaken in cases of herniation involving the foramen of Winslow, mesenteric defects in paraduodenal, duodenojejunal fossae as major blood vessels run in the edge of the constriction ring. The distended loop in such circumstances must first be decompressed, minimizing contamination, and then reduced. Obstruction from enteric strictures. Small bowel strictures usually occur secondary to tuberculosis or Crohn's disease. Malignant strictures associated with lymphoma are uncommon. Carcinoma and sarcoma are rare. Presentation is usually subacute or chronic. Standard surgical management consists of resection and anastomosis. Resection is important to establish a histological diagnosis as this can be uncertain clinically. In Crohn's disease, strictureplasty may be considered in the presence of short multiple strictures without active sepsis, see Chapter 75. Bolus obstruction. Bolus obstruction in the small bowel may be caused by gallstones, food, trichozoa, phytozoa, sticklets and worms. Gallstones. This type of obstruction tends to occur in the elderly secondary to erosion of a large gallstone directly through the gallbladder. Into the duodenum. Classically, there is impaction about 60 cm proximal to the ileocecal valve. The patient may have recurrent attacks as the obstruction may be incomplete or relapsing as a result of a ball valve effect. The characteristic radiological sign of gallstone ileus is Rigler's triad, comprising small bowel obstruction, pneumobilia and an atypical mineral shadow on radiographs of the abdomen. The presence of two of these radiological signs has been considered pathognomonic of gallstone ileus and is encountered in 40 to 50% of the cases. Note that pneumobilia is a common finding following endoscopic retrograde cholangiopancreatography with sphincterotomy. At laparotomy, the stone should be milked proximally away from the site of impaction. It may be possible to crush the stone within the bowel lumen. If not, the intestine is opened at this point and the gallstone removed. If the gallstone is faceted, a careful check for other enteric stones should be made. The region of the gallbladder should not be explored. See Chapter 71. Food. Bolus obstruction may occur after partial or total gastrectomy when unchewed articles can pass directly into the small bowel. Fruit and vegetables are particularly liable to cause obstruction. The management is similar to that for gallstones, with intraluminal crushing usually being successful. Figure 78.3 Obstructing strict. Trichobazoes and phytobazoes. These are FRM masses of undigested hair ball and fruit, vegetable FBRE, respectively. The former is due to persistent hair chewing or sucking and may be associated with an underlying psychiatric abnormality. Predisposition to phytobazoes results from a high FBRE intake, inadequate chewing, previous gastric surgery, hypochlorhydria and loss of the gastric pump mechanism. When possible, the lesion may be kneaded into the cecum. Otherwise, open removal is required. A preoperative diagnosis is difficult even with high-resolution computed tomography (CT) scanning. Stachylits. These are usually found in the small bowel in association with a jejunal diverticulum or ileal stricture. Presentation and management are identical to that of gallstones. Worms. Ascaris lumbricoides may cause low small bowel obstruction, particularly in children, the institutionalized and those near the tropics. An attack may follow the initiation of anthelminthic therapy. Debility is frequently out of proportion to that produced by the obstruction. If worms are not seen in the stool or vomitus, the diagnosis may be indicated by eosinophilia or the sight of worms within gas-filled small bowel loops on a plain radiograph. At laparotomy, it may be possible to knead the tangled mass into the cecum. If not, it should be removed. Occasionally, worms may cause a perforation and peritonitis, especially if the enteric wall is weakened by such conditions as amoebiasis. See Chapter 6. Obstruction by adhesions and bands. Adhesions. In Western countries, adhesions and bands are the most common cause of intestinal obstruction. The lifetime risk of requiring an admission to hospital for adhesional small bowel obstruction subsequent to abdominal surgery is approximately 4% and the risk of requiring a laparotomy around 2%. Adhesions start to form within hours of abdominal surgery. In the early postoperative period, the onset of such a mechanical obstruction may be difficult to differentiate from paralytic ileus. The causes of intraperitoneal adhesions are shown in Table 78.1. Any source of peritoneal irritation results in local ephedrine production, which produces adhesions between opposed surfaces. Early ephedrinous adhesions may disappear when the cause is removed, or they may become vascularized and be replaced by mature ephedrous tissue. There are several factors that may limit adhesion formation. The common causes of intra-abdominal adhesions. Acute inflammation, sites of anastomosis, reperitonealization of raw areas, trauma, ischemia. Foreign material. Talc, starch, gauze, silk. Infection. Peritonitis, tuberculosis. Chronic inflammatory conditions. Crohn's disease. Radiation enteritis. Prevention of adhesions. Factors that may limit adhesion formation include filled circle. Good surgical technique. Filled circle. Washing of the peritoneal cavity with saline to remove clots. Filled circle. Minimizing contact with gauze. Filled circle covering anastomoses and raw peritoneal surfaces. Numerous substances have been instilled in the peritoneal cavity to prevent adhesion formation, including hyaluronidase, hydrocortisone, silicone, dextran, polyvinylpropylene, PVP, chondroitin, streptomycin, anticoagulants, antihistamines, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs and streptokinase. Currently, no single agent or combination of agents has been convincingly shown to be effective. It is hoped that with more widespread use of laparoscopic surgery, the incidence of intra-abdominal adhesions will reduce. Adhesions may be classified into various types by virtue of whether they are early, fibrinous, or late, fibrous, or by underlying etiology. From a practical perspective, there are only two types: easy, flimsy ones and difficult, dense ones, figure 78.4. Postoperative adhesions giving rise to intestinal obstruction usually involve the lower small bowel and less commonly the large bowel. Bands usually only one band is culpable. This may be filled circle congenital, e.g. obliterated vitellointestinal duct, filled circle a string band following previous abdominal surgery or peritoneal inflammation. Filled circle a portion of greater omentum, usually adherent to the parietes. Acute intussusception. This occurs when one portion of the gut invaginates into an immediately adjacent segment. Almost invariably, it is the proximal into the distal. The condition is encountered most commonly in children, with a peak incidence between 5 and 10 months of age. About 90% of cases are idiopathic, but an associated upper respiratory tract infection or gastroenteritis may precede the condition. It is believed that hyperplasia of Peyer's patches in the terminal ileum may be the initiating event. Weaning, loss of passively acquired maternal immunity, and common viral pathogens have all been implicated in the pathogenesis of intussusception in infancy, see Chapter 17. Children with intussusception associated with a pathological lead point such as Meckel's diverticulum, polyp, duplication, Hennick's Conlian purpura or appendix are usually older than those with idiopathic disease. After the age of 2 years, a pathological lead point is found in at least 1/3 of affected children. In adults, cases are almost invariably associated with a lead point, which is usually a polyp, e.g. Peutz-Jeghers syndrome, a submucosal lipoma or other tumor. The phenomenon of transient intussusception in younger. On CT scanning, the target sign may be evident and, if present, is pathognomonic, figure 78.6. Patients is now recognized. Imaging of the small bowel, with CT scanning, capsule endoscopy or enteroscopy, is required to exclude intraluminal disease. 78.05. Pathology and intussusception is composed of three parts, figure 78.5, filled circle the entering or inner tube, intussusceptum, filled circle the returning or middle tube, filled circle the sheath or outer tube, intussuscipiens. The part that advances is the apex, the mass is the intussusception, and the neck is the junction of the entering layer with the mass. Intussusception may be anatomically defined according to the site and extent of invagination, table 78.2. In most children, the intussusception is ileocolic. In adults, colicolic intussusception is more common. The degree of ischemia is dependent on the tightness of invagination, which is usually greatest as it passes through the ileocecal valve. On CT scanning, the target sign may be evident and, if present, is pathognomonic, figure 78.6. It is worth noting that occasionally an asymptomatic intussusception can be observed on CT scanning in adults. This may be transient or intermittent. Intussusception filled circle most common in children. Filled circle adult cases are secondary to intestinal pathology, e.g. polyp, Meckel's diverticulum. Filled circle ileocolic is the most common variety. Filled circle can lead to an ischemic segment. Filled circle radiological reduction is indicated in most pediatric cases. Filled circle adults who present acutely require surgery. Volvulus. A volvulus is a twisting or axial rotation of a portion of bowel about its mesentery. The rotation causes obstruction to the lumen, greater than 180 degrees torsion, and if tight enough also causes vascular occlusion in the mesentery, greater than 360 degrees torsion. Bacterial fermentation adds to distension and increasing intraluminal pressure impairs capillary perfusion. Mesenteric veins become obstructed as a result of the mechanical twisting. Thrombosis results and contributes to ischemia. Volvuli may be primary or secondary. The primary form is caused by congenital malrotation of the gut, abnormal mesenteric attachments or congenital bands. Examples include volvulus neonatorum, cecal volvulus and sigmoid volvulus, see chapter 65. A secondary volvulus, which is the more common variety, is due to rotation of a segment of bowel around an acquired adhesion or stoma. Volvulus filled circle may involve the small intestine, cecum or sigmoid colon filled circle. Neonatal midgut volvulus secondary to midgut malrotation is life-threatening. Filled circle. The most common spontaneous type in adults is sigmoid volvulus. Filled circle sigmoid volvulus can be relieved by decompression per annum. Filled circle surgery may be required to prevent or relieve ischemia. Volvulus neonatorum. This occurs secondary to intestinal malrotation, see chapters 17 and 65, and is potentially catastrophic. Sigmoid volvulus. This is uncommon in Europe and the USA but more common in Eastern Europe and Africa. Indeed, it is the most common cause of large bowel obstruction in the indigenous Black African population. Rotation nearly always occurs in the anticlockwise direction. The predisposing clinical features are summarized in Figure 78.7. Other predisposing factors include a high residue diet and constipation. In Western populations, the condition is seen most often in elderly patients with chronic constipation. Comorbidities are common and chronic psychotropic drug use is associated with this condition. Younger patients present earlier and the prognosis is inversely related to the duration of symptoms. Presentation with volvulus can be classified as filled circle fulminant, sudden onset, severe pain, early vomiting, rapidly deteriorating clinical course. Filled circle indolent, insidious onset, slow progressive course, less pain, late vomiting. Compound volvulus. This is a rare condition that is also known as iliosigmoid knotting. The long pelvic mesocolon allows the ileum to twist around the sigmoid colon, resulting in gangrene of either or both segments of bowel. The patient presents with acute intestinal obstruction, but distension is comparatively mild. Plain radiography reveals distended ileal loops in a distended sigmoid colon. At operation, decompression, resection and anastomosis are required. Clinical features of intestinal obstruction. Dynamic obstruction. The diagnosis of dynamic intestinal obstruction is based on the classic quartet of pain, distension, vomiting and absolute constipation. Obstruction may be classified clinically into two types. Long pelvic mesocolon, filled circle small bowel obstruction, high or low, filled circle large bowel obstruction. The nature of the presentation will also be influenced by whether the obstruction is filled circle complete, filled circle incomplete. A complete small bowel obstruction has all the cardinal narrow attachment of pelvic mesocolon. Figure 78.7 causes predisposing to volvulus of the sigmoid colon. Idiopathic megacolon usually features. In cases of complete large bowel obstruction there is often a surprising lack of preceding symptoms. Both small and large bowel obstruction can present with more chronic symptoms in which the symptoms and signs are intermittent or the obstruction is incomplete. Incomplete obstruction is also referred to as partial or subacute. Features of obstruction. Filled circle in high small bowel obstruction. vomiting occurs early, is profuse and causes rapid dehydration. Distension is minimal with little evidence of dilated small bowel loops on abdominal radiography. Filled circle in low small bowel obstruction, pain is predominant with central distension. Vomiting occurs later. Multiple dilated small bowel loops are seen on radiography. Filled circle in large bowel obstruction, distension is early and pronounced. Pain is less severe and vomiting and dehydration are later features. The colon proximal to the obstruction is distended on abdominal radiography. The small bowel will be dilated if the ileocecal valve is incompetent. Cardinal clinical features of acute obstruction: filled circle abdominal pain, filled circle distension, filled circle vomiting, filled circle absolute constipation. Presentation will be further influenced by whether the obstruction is filled circle simple, in which the blood supply is intact, filled circle strangulating, strangulated, in which there is interference to blood flow. The common causes of intestinal obstruction in Western countries and their relative frequencies are shown in Figure 78.1. The underlying mechanisms are shown in Summary Box 78.2. The clinical features vary according to filled circle the location of the obstruction, filled circle the duration of the obstruction, filled circle the underlying pathology, filled circle the presence or absence of intestinal ischemia. Late manifestations of intestinal obstruction that may be encountered include dehydration, oliguria, hypovolemic shock, pyrexia, septicemia, respiratory embarrassment and peritonism. In all cases of suspected intestinal obstruction, the hernial orifices must be examined. Pain. Pain is the FRST symptom encountered. It occurs suddenly and is usually severe. It is colicky in nature and usually centered on the umbilicus, small bowel, or lower abdomen, large bowel, see Chapter 63. The pain coincides with increased peristaltic activity. With increasing distension, the colicky pain is replaced by a more constant diffuse pain. If there is no ischemia and the obstruction persists over several days, pain reduces and can disappear. The development of severe pain is suggestive of strangulation, especially if the pain is continuous. Beware the patient whose pain is not controlled with intravenous opiates. Colicky pain may not be a significant feature in postoperative simple mechanical obstruction, and colicky pain does not usually occur in paralytic ileus. Vomiting. The more distal the obstruction, the longer the interval between the onset of symptoms and the appearance of nausea and vomiting. As obstruction progresses, the character of the vomitus alters from digested food to feculent material, as a result of enteric bacterial overgrowth. Distension Summary Box 78.7. In the small bowel, the degree of distension is dependent on the site of the obstruction and is greater the more distal the lesion. Visible peristalsis may be present in thin patients, Figure 78.8. This can sometimes be provoked by thickening the abdominal wall. Distension is a later feature in colonic obstruction and may be minimal or absent in the presence of mesenteric vascular occlusion. Presentation will be further influenced by whether the constipation. This may be classified as absolute, i.e. neither feces nor fatus is passed, or relative, where only fatus is passed. Absolute constipation is a cardinal feature of complete intestinal obstruction. Some patients may pass fatus or feces after the onset of obstruction as a result of the evacuation of the distal bowel contents. The administration of enemas should be avoided in cases of suspected obstruction. This merely stimulates evacuation of bowel contents distal to the obstruction and confuses the clinical picture. The rule that absolute constipation is present in intestinal obstruction does not apply in filled circle Richter's hernia, filled circle gallstone ileus, filled circle mesenteric vascular occlusion, filled circle functional obstruction associated with pelvic abscess, filled circle all cases of partial obstruction, in which diarrhea may occur. Other manifestations. Dehydration is seen most commonly in small bowel obstruction because of repeated vomiting and fluid sequestration. It results in dry skin and tongue, poor venous flow and sunken eyes with oliguria. The blood urea level and hematocrit rise, giving a secondary polycythemia. Hypokalemia. Hypokalemia is not a common feature in simple mechanical obstruction. An increase in serum potassium, amylase or lactate dehydrogenase may be associated with the presence of strangulation, as may leukocytosis or leukopenia. Pyrexia in the presence of obstruction may indicate filled circle the onset of ischemia, filled circle intestinal perforation, filled circle inflammation or abscess associated with the obstructing disease. Hypothermia indicates septicemic shock or neglected cases of long duration. Abdominal tenderness. Localized tenderness indicates impending or established ischemia. The development of peritonism or peritonitis indicates impending or established infarction and/or perforation. In cases of large bowel obstruction, it is important to elicit these findings in the right iliac fossa as the cecum is most vulnerable to ischemia. Bowel sounds. High-pitched bowel sounds are present in the vast majority of patients with intestinal obstruction. Normal bowel sounds are of negative predictive value. Bowel sounds may be scanty or absent if the obstruction is long-standing and the small bowel has become inactive. Clinical features of strangulation. It is vital to distinguish strangulating from non-strangulating intestinal obstruction because the former is a surgical emergency. The diagnosis is clinical but may be aided by CT scanning as long as this does not delay surgical intervention. Summary box 78.8. Clinical features of strangulation: filled circle constant pain, severe pain, filled circle tenderness with rigidity and peritonism, filled circle shock. In addition to the features in summary box 78.8, it should be noted that filled circle, the presence of shock suggests underlying ischemia. Filled circle in impending or established strangulation, pain is never completely absent. Filled circle, the presence and character of any local tenderness are of great significance and, however mild, tenderness requires frequent reassessment. Filled circle generalized tenderness and the presence of rigidity indicates the need for early laparotomy. Filled circle when pain persists despite conservative management, even in the absence of the above signs, strangulation should be presumed. Figure 78.9. Skin discoloration over strangulation. When strangulation occurs in an external hernia, the lung is tense, tender and irreducible and there is no expansile cough impulse. Skin changes with erythema or purplish discoloration are associated with underlying ischemia. Clinical features of intussusception. The classic presentation of intussusception is with episodes of screaming and drawing up of the legs in a previously well male infant. The attacks last for a few minutes and recur repeatedly. During attacks, the child appears pale and between episodes may be listless. Vomiting may or may not occur at the outset but becomes conspicuous and bile-stained with time. Initially, the passage of stool may be normal, whereas, later, blood and mucus are evacuated, the recurrent jelly stool. Whenever possible, examination should be undertaken between episodes of colic, without disturbing the child. Classically, the abdomen is not initially distended. A lump that hardens on palpation may be discerned, but this is present in only 60% of cases, figure 78.11. There may be an associated feeling of emptiness in the right iliac fossa, the sign of dance. On rectal examination, blood-stained mucus may be found on the aphanger. Occasionally, in extensive ileocolic or colicolic intussusception, the apex may be palpable or even protrude from the anus. Unrelieved, progressive dehydration and abdominal distension from small bowel obstruction will occur, followed by peritonitis secondary to gangrene. Rarely, natural cure may occur as a result of sloughing of the intussusception. Differential diagnosis: acute gastroenteritis. Although abdominal pain and vomiting are common in acute gastroenteritis, with occasional blood and mucus in the stool, diarrhea is a leading symptom and fecal matter or bile is always present in the stool. Hennix-Conlian purpura. Hennix-Conlian purpura is associated with a characteristic rash and abdominal pain. Intussusception may occur. Clinical features of volvulus. Volvulus of the small intestine. This may be primary or secondary and usually occurs in the lower ileum. It may occur spontaneously in African people, particularly following the consumption of a large volume of vegetable matter, whereas in Western countries it is usually secondary to adhesions passing to the parietes or female pelvic organs. Cecal volvulus. This may occur as part of volvulus neonatorum or de novo and is usually a clockwise twist. It is more common in females in the 4th and FFTH decades and usually presents acutely with the classic features of obstruction. Ischemia is common. At FRST the obstruction may be partial, with the passage of fatus and feces. In 25% of cases, examination may reveal a palpable tympanic swelling in the midline or left side of the abdomen. The volvulus typically results in the cecum lying in the left upper quadrant. The diagnosis is not usually made preoperatively. Sausage-shaped lump, concavity towards the umbilicus. Sigmoid volvulus. The symptoms are of large bowel obstruction. Presentation varies in severity and acuteness, with younger patients appearing to develop the more acute form. Abdominal distension is an early and progressive sign, which may be associated with hiccup and retching. Constipation is absolute. In the elderly, a more chronic form may be seen. In some patients the grossly distended taut left colon is visible through the abdominal wall. Imaging erect abdominal FLMS are no longer routinely obtained and the radiological diagnosis is based on a supine abdominal FLM. Figure 78.11. The physical signs is recorded by Hamilton Bailey in a typical An erect FLM may subsequently be requested when further doubt exists. When distended with gas, the jejunum, ileum, cecum, and remaining colon have a characteristic appearance in adults and older children that allows them to be distinguished radiologically. Radiological features of obstruction. On plain radiograph, filled circle. The obstructed small bowel is characterized by straight segments that are generally central and lie transversely. No minimal gas is seen in the colon. Filled circle. The jejunum is characterized by its valvulae connivens, which completely pass across the width of the bowel and are regularly spaced, giving a concertina or ladder effect. Filled circle ileum. The distal ileum is featureless. Filled circle. A distended cecum appears as a rounded gas shadow in the right iliac fossa. Filled circle. Large bowel, except for the cecum, shows haustral folds, which, unlike valvulae connivens, are spaced irregularly, do not cross the whole diameter of the bowel and do not have indentations placed opposite one another. Filled circle. Small bowel fluid levels may be seen on an erect abdominal radiograph. Fluid levels seen radiologically appear later than gas shadows as it takes time for gas and fluid to separate, figure 78.13. These are most prominent on an erect abdominal radiograph or cross-sectional imaging. In adults, two inconstant fluid levels, one at the duodenal cap and the other in the terminal ileum, may be regarded as normal. In infants, less than 1 year old, a few fluid levels in the small bowel may be physiological. In this age group it is difficult to distinguish large from small bowel in the presence of obstruction because the characteristic features seen in adults are not present or are unreliable. During the obstructive process, fluid levels become more conspicuous and more numerous when paralysis has occurred. When fluid levels are pronounced, the obstruction is advanced. In the small bowel, the number of fluid levels is directly proportional to the degree of obstruction and to its site, the number increasing the more distal the lesion. In patients without evidence of strangulation, there is a role for other imaging modalities. The appearance of contrast in the colon 4 to 24 hours after administration of 50 to 100 ml of water-soluble contrast agent had a sensitivity of 96% and a specificity of 98% in predicting resolution of small bowel obstruction. If contrast does not reach the colon, surgery is required in approximately 90% of patients. Administration of a water-soluble agent was also effective in reducing the need for surgery and shortening the duration of hospital stay. Low colonic obstruction does not commonly give rise to small bowel fluid levels unless advanced, whereas high colonic obstruction may do so in the presence of an incompetent ileocecal valve. Colonic obstruction is usually associated with a large amount of gas in the cecum. A limited water-soluble enema can be undertaken to differentiate large bowel obstruction from pseudo-obstruction. A barium follow-through is contraindicated in the presence of acute obstruction and may be life-threatening. CT scanning is now used very widely to investigate all forms of intestinal obstruction. It is highly accurate and its only limitations are in diagnosing ischemia. Two features may be helpful when looking for intestinal ischemia: reduced enhancement of the bowel wall and absence of mesenteric edema. It is important to remember that, even with the best imaging techniques, the diagnosis of strangulation remains primarily clinical. CT features of strangulation: filled circle, reduced bowel wall enhancement on CT increases the probability of strangulation. Filled circle, absence of mesenteric fluid on CT decreases the probability of strangulation. Filled circle, the clinical reliability of other CT signs is doubtful for predicting strangulation. Compacted foreign bodies may be seen on abdominal radiographs. It is noteworthy that gas flood loops and fluid levels in the small and large bowel can also be seen in established paralytic ileus and pseudo-obstruction, see Chapter 73. The former can, however, normally be distinguished on clinical grounds, whereas the latter can be confirmed radiologically. Fluid levels may also be seen in non-obstructing conditions such as gastroenteritis, acute pancreatitis and intra-abdominal sepsis. Imaging in intussusception. A plain abdominal feld usually reveals evidence of small or large bowel obstruction with an absent cecal gas shadow in Ileocolic cases. A soft tissue opacity is often visible in children. A barium enema may be used to diagnose the presence of an ileocolic intussusception but does not demonstrate small bowel intussusception. Abdominal ultrasonography has a high diagnostic sensitivity in children, demonstrating the typical donut appearance of concentric rings in transverse section. CT scanning is currently considered the most sensitive radiological method to confirm intussusception, with a reported diagnostic accuracy of 58 to 100%. The characteristic features of CT scan include a target, or sausage-shaped soft tissue mass with a layering effect. Figure 78.6, mesenteric vessels within the bowel lumen are also typical. Imaging in volvulus. Filled circle in cecal volvulus. Radiological abnormalities are identifiable in nearly all patients but are often non-specific, with cecal dilatation, 98 to 100%, a single air fluid level, 72 to 88%, small bowel dilatation, 42 to 55%, and absence of gas in distal colon, 82 to 91%, reported as the most common abnormalities. A barium enema may be used to confirm the diagnosis if there are no concerns about ischemia, with an absence of barium in the cecum and a bird's beak deformity. CT scanning is now the imaging of choice. Filled circle in sigmoid volvulus. A plain radiograph shows massive colonic distension. The classic appearances of a dilated loop of bowel. The two limbs are seen running diagonally across the abdomen from right to left, figure 78.14, with two fluid levels seen, one within each loop of bowel, if an erect FLM is taken. Filled circle in volvulus neonatorum. The abdominal radiograph shows a variable appearance. Initially, it may appear normal or show evidence of duodenal obstruction, but as the intestinal strangulation progresses, the abdomen becomes relatively gasless. Treatment of acute intestinal obstruction. There are three main measures used to treat acute intestinal obstruction. The FRST2 steps are always necessary before attempting surgical relief of obstruction and are the mainstay of postoperative management. Principles of surgical intervention for obstruction management of filled circle, the segment at the site of obstruction, filled circle, the distended proximal bowel, filled circle, the underlying cause of obstruction. Supportive management. Nasogastric decompression is achieved by the passage of a non-vented, RILE, or vented, Salem tube. The tubes are normally placed on free drainage with 4-hourly aspiration but may be placed on continuous or intermittent suction. As well as facilitating decompression proximal to the obstruction, they are essential to reducing the risk of subsequent aspiration during induction of anesthesia and after extubation. The basic biochemical abnormality in intestinal obstruction is sodium and water loss, and therefore the appropriate replacement is Hartmann's solution or normal saline. The volume required varies and should be determined by clinical hematological and biochemical criteria. Surgical treatment. The timing of surgical intervention is dependent on the clinical picture. There are several indications for early surgical intervention. Indications for early surgical intervention: filled circle, obstructed external hernia, filled circle, clinical features of intestinal strangulation, filled circle, obstruction in a previously inoperated abdomen. The classic clinical advice that the sun should not both rise and set on a case of unrelieved acute intestinal obstruction was based on the concern that intestinal ischemia would develop while the patient was waiting for surgery. If there is complete obstruction, but no evidence of intestinal ischemia, it is reasonable to defer surgery until the patient has been adequately resuscitated. Where obstruction is likely to be secondary to adhesions, conservative management may be continued for up to 72 hours in the hope of spontaneous resolution. If the site of obstruction is unknown, adequate exposure is best achieved by a midline laparotomy incision. Assessment is directed to field circle the site of the obstruction, field circle the nature of the obstruction, field circle the viability of the gut. In cases of small bowel obstruction, the FRST maneuver is to deliver the distended small bowel into the wound. This permits access to the site of obstruction. The small bowel should be covered with moist swabs and the weight of the fluid-filled bowel supported such that the blood supply to the mesentery is not impaired. Operative decompression should be performed. Whenever possible, the simplest and safest method is to insert a large bore orogastric tube and to milk the small bowel contents in a retrograde manner to the stomach for aspiration. Great care must be taken not to tear the mesentery or injure the small bowel, which will be distended and edematous. It is important to ensure that the stomach is empty at the end of the procedure to reduce the incidence of postoperative aspiration. Decompression using Savage's decompressor within a serromuscular purse string suture may be required. Its benefits should be balanced against the potential risk of septic complications from spillage and the risk of leakage from the suture line postoperatively. The type of surgical procedure required will depend upon the cause of obstruction, division of adhesions, enterolysis, excision, bypass or proximal decompression. If resection is performed, Savage's decompressor can be inserted into this segment to obviate the risk of a suture line. Following relief of obstruction, the viability of the involved bowel should be carefully assessed, Table 78.3. Although frankly infarcted bowel is obvious, viability in many cases may be difficult to discern. If in doubt, the bowel should be wrapped in hot packs for 10 minutes and then reassessed. The state of the mesenteric vessels and pulsation in adjacent arcades should be sought. Viability is also confirmed by color, sheen and peristalsis. If, at the end of this period, there is still uncertainty about bowel viability, it should be resected unless there is concern that the extent of resection may lead to short bowel syndrome, see Chapter 74. In which case, or in the case of a critically unwell patient, consideration should be given to resecting necrotic bowel and raising both residual ends as stomas. This avoids anastomosis in unfavorable circumstances. When no resection has been undertaken or there are multiple ischemic areas, mesenteric vascular occlusion, a second look laparotomy at 24 to 48 hours may be required. Intestinal ischemia, reperfusion injury has been described. Following reperfusion of ischemic bowel with remote lung injury resulting from the release of inflammatory mediators. This should be borne in mind when dealing with ischemic bowel. For example, if there is a volvulus with established infarction, detorsion should be avoided until the affected mesentery has been clamped and thus reperfusion injury prevented. Differentiation between viable and non-viable intestine. Circulation. Dark color becomes lighter visible pulsation in mesenteric arteries. Dark color remains no detectable pulsation. General appearance shiny, dull and lusterless. Intestinal musculature. Firm, flabby, thin and friable. Peristalsis may be observed. No peristalsis. Special attention should always be paid to the sites of constriction at each end of an obstructed segment. If of doubtful viability, they should be enfolded using a serromuscular suture, Figure 78.15. The surgical management of massive infarction is dependent on the patient's overall prognostic criteria. In the elderly, infarction of the small bowel from the duodenojejunal flexure to the right colon may be considered incurable, whereas in the young, with the potential for long-term intravenous alimentation and small bowel transplantation. A policy of excision may be justified. Whenever the small bowel is resected, the exact site of resection, the length of the resected segment and that of the residual bowel should be recorded. As laparoscopic surgery is now so common, it is important to note that small bowel obstruction and strangulation occur in relation to port site hernias. The risk of port site herniation is related to older age, higher body mass, trocar diameter and extension of the port site for tissue extraction. For laparoscopic cholecystectomy, the hernia rate is reported to be around 2%. Obstruction and strangulation have even been reported through 5 mm port sites. Complications from these hernias may present in the early postoperative period and as a rectus hernia. They can be easily overlooked and careful examination of port sites in patients with small bowel obstruction is essential. Treatment of adhesions. Initial management is based on intravenous rehydration and nasogastric decompression. Occasionally, this treatment is curative. Although an initial conservative regimen is considered appropriate, regular assessment is mandatory to ensure that strangulation does not occur. Conservative treatment should not usually be prolonged beyond 72 hours. When laparotomy is required, although multiple adhesions may be found, only one may be causative. If there is absolute certainty that this is the cause of the obstruction, this should be divided and the remaining adhesions can be left in situ unless severe angulation is present. Division of these adhesions will only cause further adhesion formation. When obstruction is caused by multiple adhesions, the adhesions should be freed by sharp dissection from the duodenojejunal junction to the cecum. Following the release of band obstruction, the constriction sites that have suffered direct compression should be carefully assessed and, if they show residual color changes, invaginated with a seromuscular suture, figure 78.15. Laparoscopic adhesiolysis may be considered in highly selected cases of small bowel obstruction. This is classed as an advanced laparoscopic procedure and should only be undertaken by surgeons with advanced laparoscopic skills. Treatment of adhesive obstruction. Filled circle. Initially treat conservatively provided there are no signs of strangulation, should rarely continue conservative treatment for longer than 72 hours. Filled circle at operation, divide only the causative adhesions and limit dissection. Filled circle. Repair serosal tears, invaginate or resect areas of doubtful viability. Filled circle. Laparoscopic adhesiolysis should only be performed by surgeons with advanced laparoscopic skills. Treatment of recurrent intestinal obstruction caused by adhesions. Several procedures may be considered in the presence of recurrent obstruction including filled circle repeat adhesiolysis, enterolysis, alone, filled circle Nobel's plication operation. Filled circle Child's Phillips transmesenteric plication, filled circle intestinal intubation. The last three operations are now very rarely performed, and can probably be consigned to the history books. They have never been required by the author. Postoperative intestinal obstruction. Differentiation between persistent paralytic ileus and early mechanical obstruction may be difficult in the early postoperative period. Mechanical obstruction is more likely if the patient has regained bowel function postoperatively that subsequently stops. Obstruction is usually incomplete and the majority settle with continued conservative management. Postoperative. Intra-abdominal sepsis is a potent cause of postoperative obstruction. CT scanning with oral contrast is of particular value in the assessment of the postoperative abdomen. Treatment of intussusception. In the infant with ileocholic intussusception, after resuscitation with intravenous fluids, broad-spectrum antibiotics and nasogastric drainage. Non-operative reduction can be attempted using an air or barium enema. Successful reduction can only be accepted if there is free reflux of air or barium into the small bowel, together with resolution of symptoms and signs in the patient. Non-operative reduction is contraindicated if there are signs of peritonitis or perforation, there is a known pathological lead point, or in the presence of profound shock. In experienced units, more than 70% of intussusceptions can be reduced non-operatively. Strangulated bowel and pathological lead points are unlikely to reduce. Perforation of the colon during pneumatic or hydrostatic reduction is a recognized hazard but is rare. Recurrent intussusception occurs in up to 10% of patients after non-operative reduction. Surgery is required when radiological reduction has failed or is contraindicated. After resuscitation, a transverse right-sided abdominal incision provides good access. Reduction is achieved by gently compressing the most distal part of the intussusception towards its origin, making sure not to pull. The last part of the reduction is the most difficult, figure 78.16. After reduction, the terminal part of the small bowel and the appendix will be seen to be bruised and edematous. The viability of the whole bowel should be checked carefully. An irreducible intussusception, or one complicated by infarction or a pathological lead point, requires resection and primary anastomosis. Acute intestinal obstruction of the newborn. Neonatal intestinal obstruction has many potential causes. Congenital atresia and stenosis. Figure 78.1. Figure 78.16. The most common: intestinal malrotation with midgut volvulus, meconium ileus, Hirschsprung's disease, imperforate anus, necrotizing enterocolitis, and an incarcerated inguinal hernia may. Also be responsible. Many of these conditions are discussed in chapters 17 and 18. Intestinal atresia, duodenal atresia, and stenosis are the most common forms of intestinal obstruction in the newborn, see chapter 18. Jejunal or ileal atresias are next in frequency, whereas colonic atresia is rare. The possibility of multiple atresias makes intraoperative assessment of the whole small and large bowel mandatory. As with all congenital anomalies, associated malformations are common and should be excluded. There are four main types of jejunal, ileal atresia, ranging from an obstructing membrane with continuity of the bowel wall through blind-ended segments of bowel separated by IF Prescott or V-shaped mesenteric defect, including the so-called apple peel atresia, figure 78.17, to multiple atresias, string of sausages. The obstructed proximal bowel is at risk of perforation, which may happen prenatally, causing meconium peritonitis in the fetus. Small bowel atresias present with intestinal obstruction soon after birth. Bilious vomiting is the dominant feature in jejunal atresia, whereas abdominal distension is more prominent with ileal atresia. A small amount of pale meconium may be passed despite the atresia. Plain abdominal radiographs show a variable number of dilated loops of bowel and fluid levels according to the level of obstruction. In a stable infant, a contrast enema may be required to clarify the cause of a distal bowel obstruction. Surgery. Duodenal atresia is corrected by a duodenostomy. In most cases of jejunal, ileal atresia, the distal end of the dilated proximal small bowel is resected and a primary end-to-end anastomosis is possible. If the proximal bowel is extremely dilated, it may need to be tapered to the distal bowel before anastomosis. Occasionally, a temporary stoma is required before definitive repair. Meconium ileus. Cystic fibrosis is almost always the underlying cause of this condition. Meconium is normally kept fluid by the action of pancreatic enzymes. In meconium ileus, the terminal ileum becomes filled with thick viscid meconium, resulting in progressive intestinal obstruction. A sterile meconium peritonitis may have occurred in utero. Visibly dilated loops of bowel are often palpable in the newborn with meconium ileus. An abdominal radiograph may show a dilated small intestine with mottling. Fluid levels are generally not seen. Unlike ileoatresia, there is no abrupt termination of the gas-filled intestine. A contrast enema shows an unused microcolon. As the condition is caused by an autosomal recessive genetic defect, a family history may be present. Further assessment includes gene mutation analysis and, beyond the neonatal period, a sweat test, which shows elevated sodium and chloride levels, greater than 70 millimoles L. Uncomplicated meconium ileus may respond to treatment. With a hyperosmolar gastrograph enema, this draws fluid into the gut lumen and also has detergent properties, which help to liquefy the meconium. Infants treated in this way need extra intravenous fluids to compensate for fluid shifts. Meconium ileus complicated by intestinal perforation, volvulus or atresia, or unresponsive to enemas, demands surgery. Various surgical procedures are used, including intestinal resection and temporary stoma formation, resection and primary anastomosis, and, in uncomplicated cases, enterotomy and irrigation of the bowel. The Bishop-Koop operation, figure 78.18, with its irrigating stoma is now rarely used. Treatment of acute large bowel obstruction. Large bowel obstruction is caused by an underlying carcinoma, or less commonly diverticular disease, and presents in an acute or chronic form. The condition of pseudo-obstruction should always be considered and excluded by a limited contrast study or CT scan to confirm mechanical obstruction. After full resuscitation, the abdomen should be opened through a midline incision. Care should be taken to ensure that the loss of tamponade of the abdominal wall does not lead to increased cecal distension and rupture. This starts with splitting along the line of the tinea coli on the antimesenteric border. Distension of the cecum will confirm large bowel involvement. Identification of a collapsed distal segment of the large bowel and its sequential proximal assessment will readily lead to identification of the cause. As surgery for malignant bowel cancer is technically challenging, wherever possible a suitably trained surgeon should perform the procedure. When a removable lesion is found in the cecum, ascending colon, hepatic fracture or proximal transverse colon, an emergency right hemicolectomy should be performed. A primary anastomosis is safe if the patient's general condition is reasonable, see Chapter 77. If the lesion is not resectable, a proximal stoma, colostomy or ileostomy if the ileocecal valve is incompetent, or ileotransverse bypass should be considered. Obstructing lesions at the splenic fracture should be treated by an extended right hemicolectomy with ileodescending colonic anastomosis. For obstructing lesions of the left colon or rectosigmoid junction, immediate resection should be considered unless there are clear contraindications. In rare instances or when cecal perforation is imminent, additional time to improve the patient's clinical condition can be bought by performing an emergency cecostomy or loop transverse colostomy, loop ileostomy in the presence of an incompetent ileocecal valve. In the absence of senior clinical staff, it is safest to bring the proximal colon to the surface as a colostomy. When possible, the distal bowel should be brought out at the same time, called Mikulich procedure, to facilitate subsequent closure. In the majority of cases, the distal bowel will not reach and is closed and returned to the abdomen, Hartmann's procedure. A second stage colorectal anastomosis can be planned when the patient is FT. If an anastomosis is to be considered using the proximal colon, it may be decompressed and cleaned by an on-table colonic lavage. In a palliative situation or if a patient is unst for major surgery, insertion of a self-expanding metal stent may be preferable as it offers reduced mortality and morbidity in stoma formation. See Chapter 77. Technical and clinical success rates for stenting are of the order of 80 to 90%, figure 78.19. For patients with potentially curative disease, stenting is a bridge to surgery, usually performed 1 to 4 weeks post-stenting, has been shown to reduce stoma formation but not to reduce postoperative mortality. Recent guidelines from the European Society of Gastrointestinal Endoscopy recommend stenting as a bridge to surgery to be discussed, within a shared decision-making process, as a treatment option in patients with potentially curable left-sided obstructing colon cancer as an alternative to emergency resection. This is a strong recommendation based on high-quality evidence. Colonic stenting should be performed directly supervised by an operator who can demonstrate competence in both colonoscopy and fluoroscopic techniques and who performs colonic stenting on a regular basis. A time interval of 2 to 4 weeks is generally employed prior to definitive surgery. This period allows treatment of comorbidities and completion of staging investigations. A decompressing stoma as a bridge to elective surgery is a valid option if the patient is not a candidate for colonic stenting or when stenting expertise is not available. Treatment of cecal volvulus. At operation, the volvulus is frequently found to be ischemic and needs resection. If viable, the volvulus should be reduced. Sometimes, this can only be achieved after decompression of the cecum using a needle. Further management consists of either resection or affixation of the cecum to the right iliac fossa, cecopexy, and or a cecostomy in those considered unst for resection. Recurrence of volvulus after cecopexy has been reported in up to 40% of cases. Treatment of sigmoid volvulus. Flexible sigmoidoscopy or rigid sigmoidoscopy and insertion of a fattest tube should be carried out to allow diffusion of the gut. The tube should be secured in place with tape for 24 hours and a repeat radiograph taken to ensure that decompression has occurred. Success, as long as ischemic bowel is excluded, will resolve the acute problem. In featuring patients, an elective sigmoid colectomy is required. It may not be reasonable to offer any further treatment following successful endoscopic decompression in elderly or unst patients. However, if there are recurrent episodes of volvulus, the options are resection or two-point affixation with combined endoscopic, percutaneous tube insertion. Gastrostomy tubes are frequently used for this purpose. When the bowel is viable, affixation of the sigmoid colon to the posterior abdominal wall may be a safer maneuver in inexperienced hands. Resection is preferable if it can be achieved safely. A Paul Mikulich procedure is useful, particularly if there is suspicion of impending gangrene, figure 78.20. An alternative procedure is a sigmoid colectomy and, when anastomosis is considered unwise, a Hartmann's procedure with subsequent reanastomosis can be carried out. Chronic large bowel obstruction, figure 78.19 radio. The symptoms of chronic intestinal obstruction may arise from two sources, the cause and the subsequent obstruction. The causes of obstruction may be organic. Filled circle intraluminal, rare, fecal impaction, filled circle intrinsic intramural, strictures, Crohn's disease, emia, diverticular, anastomotic stenosis. Filled circle extrinsic intramural, rare, metastatic deposits, ovarian, endometriosis, stomal stenosis. Or functional, filled circle Hirschsprung's disease, idiopathic megacolon, pseudoobstruction. The symptoms of chronic obstruction differ in their predominance, timing and degree from acute obstruction. In functional cases, the symptoms may have been present for months or years. Constipation appears FRST. It is initially relative and may become absolute, associated with distension. In the presence of large bowel disease, the point of greatest distension is in the cecum, and this is heralded by the onset of pain. Vomiting is a late feature and therefore dehydration is less severe. Examination is unremarkable, save for confirmation of distension, which can be profound, figure 78.21, and the onset of peritonism in late cases. Rectal examination may confirm the presence of fecal impaction or a tumor. Investigation. Plain abdominal radiography confirms the presence of large bowel distension. All such cases should be investigated by a subsequent single contrast water-soluble enema study, CT scan or endoscopic assessment to rule out functional disease. Organic disease requires decompression with either a laparotomy or stent. Stomal stenosis can usually be managed at the abdominal wall level. Surgical management after resuscitation depends on the underlying cause and the relevant chapters in this book should be consulted. Functional disease requires colonoscopic decompression. In the FRST instance in conservative management, intestinal perforation can occur in patients with functional obstruction, see Chapter 73. Adynamic obstruction. Paralytic ileus. This may be defined as a state in which there is failure of transmission of peristaltic waves secondary to neuromuscular failure, i.e. in the myenteric, Auerbach's, and submucous, Meissner's plexuses. The resultant stasis leads to accumulation of fluid and gas within the bowel, with associated distension, vomiting, absence of bowel sounds and absolute constipation. Varieties. The following varieties are recognized. Filled circle postoperative. A degree of ileus usually occurs after any abdominal procedure and is self-limiting, with a very duration of 24 to 72 hours. Postoperative ileus may be prolonged in the presence of hypoproteinemia or metabolic abnormality. Filled circle infection. Intra-abdominal sepsis may give rise to localized or generalized ileus. Filled circle reflex ileus. This may occur following fractures of the spine or ribs, retroperitoneal hemorrhage or even the application of a plaster jacket. Filled circle metabolic. Uremia and hypokalemia are the most common contributory factors. Clinical features. Paralytic ileus takes on a clinical significance if, 72 hours after laparotomy, filled circle there has been no return of bowel sounds on auscultation, filled circle there has been no passage of fatus. Abdominal distension becomes more marked and tympanitic. Colicky pain is not a feature. Distension increases pain from the abdominal wound. In the absence of gastric aspiration, a faultless vomiting may occur. Radiologically, the abdomen shows gas-filled loops of intestine with multiple fluid levels, if an erect FLM is felt necessary. Management. Nasogastric tubes are not required routinely after elective intra-abdominal surgery. Paralytic ileus is managed with the use of nasogastric suction and restriction of oral intake until bowel sounds and the passage of fatus return. Electrolyte balance must be maintained. The use of an enhanced recovery program with early introduction of fluids and solids is, however, becoming increasingly popular, see Chapter 73. Specific treatment is directed towards the cause, but the following general principles apply. Filled circle. If a primary cause is identified, this must be treated. Filled circle. Gastrointestinal distension must be relieved by decompression. Close attention to fluid and electrolyte balance is essential. Filled circle. There is no convincing evidence for the use of prokinetic drugs to treat postoperative adynamic ileus. Filled circle. If paralytic ileus is prolonged, CT scanning will demonstrate any intra-abdominal sepsis or mechanical obstruction and therefore guide any requirement for laparotomy. The decision to take a patient back to theater in these circumstances is always difficult. The need for a laparotomy becomes increasingly likely the longer the bowel inactivity persists, particularly if it lasts for more than 7 days or if bowel activity recommences following surgery and then ceases. Pseudo-obstruction. This condition describes an obstruction, usually of the colon, that occurs in the absence of a mechanical cause or acute intra-abdominal disease. It is associated with a variety of syndromes in which there is an underlying neuropathy and/or myopathy and a range of other factors. Small intestinal pseudo-obstruction. This condition may be primary, i.e. idiopathic, or associated with familial visceral myopathy, or secondary. The clinical picture consists of recurrent subacute obstruction. The diagnosis is made by the exclusion of a mechanical cause. Treatment consists of initial correction of any underlying disorder. Metoclopramide and erythromycin may be of use. Colonic pseudo-obstruction. This may occur in an acute or a chronic form. The former, also known as Ogilvie's syndrome, presents as acute large bowel obstruction. Abdominal radiographs show evidence of colonic obstruction, with marked cecal distension being a common feature. Indeed, cecal perforation is a well-recognized complication. The absence of a mechanical cause requires urgent confirmation by colonoscopy or a single contrast verticillable barium enema or CT. The etiology, investigation and management are covered in detail in Chapter 73.